All right, we might get started. Thank you to everybody for turning up. Thank you for Westan for hosting this as well. It's a fantastic relationship we've had with Westan for many, many years since the inception of Fusion Signage. So welcome to everybody. Basically, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to showcase Fusion Signage as a whole. I'm conscious that most of you guys in here are going to be resellers as well. So really it comes down to how to sell Fusion Signage, some of the main features and main selling points within here. And I can also show towards the end some of our more pro level features for customers that need more than just the simplicity of Fusion Signage. So Fusion Signage is a completely cloud-based content management system for digital signage. So I'm going to assume that everybody knows what digital signage is. It's putting a screen on the wall, putting a content management system on it to display content anywhere around the country. So within Fusion Signage, we have a number of different prices and license options that are all available on our main website. We have our basic license, our advanced license, and our pro license. And then we have 3 different durations: annual, 3-year, and 5-yearly. So Westan will be able to provide you with a full reseller price list. Margins are around 30% in there, so it gives you a really good opportunity for you guys to get an annuity every time you do the renewal. And we do have about a 90% renewal rate, which is fantastic. So by the time you get a customer on, chances are, come around time for renewal again, they are going to re-up, which is a good opportunity to talk to them again, see if they need any screens or see if they need any additional assistance. But when it comes to selling these licenses, majority of the time, customers will just go with the advanced, as it contains things like our designer to create content within the platform, as well as scheduling and a few other little features that just make quality of life a little bit more relevant for the customers, including a permission system in here. Pro license is tailored more for our enterprise level customers, and this is where you have a customer that requires things like single sign-on. So something in an Azure Active Directory, if you need that kind of functionality to push users through, we can do that in there, single sign-on and SCIM. It's got our location system, it's got an approval system, and I'll show you these things at the end as well. And it's going to have our tagging system, which is coming out very, very shortly. So these things will really help your customers manage probably 20 or more screens very, very effectively. But there's features and functionality that they can choose from between these 3 licenses. So feel free to reach out to us to get the best option. If you're kind of at a pinch, always just go with the advanced, because you can always upgrade later. So in saying all that, this is what the customer will see. So the guys at Westan can really help set up the account for you. They can pre-stage the application on the screen, or you guys can do that yourself. But once it's here, they'll log in and the user will get their email address added in. They'll log in and they'll be able to see their dashboard. So the dashboard gives you the high level overview of the account. And there's really 3 main factors within here that Fusion Signage uses. First one is content. So content is images, videos that the customer creates either in After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, or designs, which is what we can use to create within the platform here. But it's really about the media that they want to be able to display on their screen. So first and foremost is getting that content into the account and ready to go. Next thing is a playlist, and a playlist is just the conduit between that content and the screen. So the customer can create as many playlists as they want, and really this is just kind of naming it based on a convention that makes sense to them. So it could be the front window content, it could be Brisbane site, it could be my standard promotion. Really just says this is the content that exists within this playlist, and I'm going to put this playlist on 1 or more screens. And then we have our schedules, and the schedules just allows you to change between multiple playlists based on time of the day. So you could say, I want this playlist to play in the morning, this playlist to play in the afternoon, or Friday afternoon, I want to change my content over to this. So it automates the changing, so you don't have to manually log in and say, I want to put this on in the morning. It can just automate that process for you. So if you can understand those 3 kind of areas, then you'll have your content uploaded, put into a playlist, and then put into a schedule. On the right over here, we can see some high-level information, including number of screens online. Obviously, as a cloud-based solution, we need to make sure that the devices are online. This is where you guys come in. We always kind of recommend using Ethernet connection instead of Wi-Fi, just for reliability. But at a pinch, Wi-Fi will work. So online to us means the application is running on the screen, it's connected to the internet, and the screen is turned on. So if it's ever customer comes to you and says, look, my screen's showing as offline, 99% of the time it's going to be your internet connection on site, but other times it could be that the screen is physically turned off. So if the application can't communicate with our servers, it's going to show here as offline. Down here, you've got the number of licenses, storage, and bandwidth. These are all cumulative together. So the more licenses you get, the more storage and the more bandwidth, and it becomes pretty arbitrary after about the first license. But either way, it's there just in case the customer starts to, upload way too much content. So on the dashboard here, you'll see on the left, we've got the design option, the manage option, and the deploy option. So this is our little menu structure, and you start at the top, work your way to the bottom, and you've pretty much gotten your content onto the screen. So I'll show you the designer quickly. I won't go into this in too much detail, but in here, if you're selling this to customers, it's a really good place to start at the top with the marketplace. So in here, we do have some templates which can be purchased by the customer, and this really just gets them up and running with content really, really quickly. So if you do have a customer that maybe doesn't have any design skills or doesn't have the capabilities internally to create that content, you can come in and say, look, for $50, you can come in here, look at this template and say, yep, you can use this as a starting point. It's got a video background. And once they buy it, they can use this in any way that they want. So it's really, they're buying this as a starting point, and they can customize it however they want. So we do have options on the left for corporate, education, entertainment, menu boards, and we have landscape and portrait options as well. Obviously, there is a cost associated with it, but it's very cost effective when it comes to making sure that the screen looks great when you do the installation, rather than, putting up an image that perhaps, doesn't make the solution look as good. So keep an eye on that and really use that as a selling point to say, hey, this content can really help you get most out of your solution. But otherwise, back in the My Template section, included as part of an advanced or a pro license, you have the ability to create the designer. So this is included, it's free. They can just come in and use some of our layouts here, or they can create it from a blank design. You can choose landscape or portrait, or normal and overlay, and I'll show you what the overlay does in a second. So if we use this kind of layout here, brings it up, and now this is a full, what you see is what you get editor. So burger special, for example, good spelling. You can start to type this in, copy and paste these elements, and just say, $19. I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but you can start to see, I guess, how easy it is to put something together. If they don't have their own backgrounds and images, you can use our free stock images on the left, which could come up with a million free to use stock images. So if I just said, let's go wood, see if there's a texture, I can apply that to the background, and now I've got this nice kind of wood texture in the background. And then I can put a shape in and start to build content out within here. So pretty quickly, you could have a menu design or a promotion design that looks half decent. Obviously, I'm not doing it justice. You could add in a new image with your own imagery in here, or I could use Unsplash again and just find a picture of a burger, come in and say, yep, that's the one that I want to use. Import that file, cover it, and now your burger special is starting to come to life. So really, creating content within the platform just simplifies the process of not needing to use Illustrator, After Effects, Canva. You could just put this together pretty quickly and then edit it on the fly whenever they need to, because all these elements are now editable. It also allows you to do dynamic widgets. So this is where we start to get a lot more power out of digital signage. So putting on something like a clock, which updates as the time updates on the device, or a countdown, or the date, whether HTML allows us to put in information from external systems. So we've done integrations into tram systems, event management systems, point of sale systems. And instead of putting in a fixed price, you could put in a dynamic price. And we've also done an integration to a point of sale system directly called Redcat, where this is now a dynamic field pulled directly from the point of sale. So if they update the POS, it updates it on the screen. So HTML allows us to put code in that can dynamically update content on the screen from external source when we don't have a specific widget built. Otherwise, we've got image slideshow, website, YouTube Live, QR codes, text editors, so on and so forth. Just lots of dynamic data that can be built into these designs. So instead of just putting an image or video that's static, you can start to bring it to life with these widgets. And we're always looking to add more in here as well. The other thing that we can do is turn this design into an overlay. So if I was to go up here to the settings wheel, click on overlay, and now you see that this is all transparent. What this allows us to do is now create a widget. So when we build a playlist, as I said, it's an accumulation of media, but now what we can do is build this as a widget that sits on top of that media. So let's just say in the top right, I just wanted a little design that looked like this, terrible coloring, but there you go. Little clock widget in the top right-hand corner. I'm going to save this as an overlay, so green overlay, and I'll show you how that comes into play a little bit later. So showcasing the designer essentially just shows them how easy it is to create content. Obviously, if you have purchased any of these templates, so here's some of the ones in here, I could use this, create a design from here. Now all these elements in here are editable once it loads, and I could come in and say, okay, I actually want to change this to be, $17, for example, and make this classic garlic bread my own name. So really it just becomes a way for them to come in and use it as a starting point to edit their content and save it themselves. So have a play around with the designer. It's going to be doing a lot more tricky stuff in the future with dynamic feeds and dynamically updating, especially in conjunction with our tagging system, which I'll show you a little bit later. But it's free if you've got the advanced or higher license. No questions so far? Perfect. Under the manage section, this is on the left over here, the third option down. This is where you can organize all of the media, the content, the playlists, and the schedules within your account. So it comes with a generic folder structure that you guys can build and the customer can build. You can add your own folders, you can add subfolders, delete, rename. But really, this just comes down to organizing the media in a way that your customer makes sense to them. So you could have a whole promo in here, upload all your images and videos, create a playlist and a schedule, and just contain it within that one folder. So getting content in, simply just drag it into the folder on the right over here, or press the add, and then you've got the image and video option to browse on your computer and upload your media files in there. You can upload a website as well, which just allows you to put a website URL or just use the design. So that takes you back to the designer. So once you've got your media in, you can do a few things. So you can see the file name, the media type. Status just goes through our conversion process just to make sure that the file is ready to be sent to the screen. So we just transcode it to make sure it's the most common file format, because we do have some funky file formats that people try to do. When it was last updated, resolution, file size, and where it's being used. So you can see that file is being used in this playlist, so I know not to delete it. And then you can just hover over to see what that content looks like. You've got options here to replace, download, delete, and so on. So all your pretty standard stuff that you'd expect. When you're ready, you could create a playlist. So under the manage section, we go to add playlist and then come in and say, I want to create it as test. And now we can start to populate this with new content. So in here, I can press add and go to media. It gives me a media modal pop-up, which shows me all of the media that I've uploaded onto this account. So we can just go through and start clicking on these files and it will start building the playlist behind. And you can see any of the newest content at the top as well, or I can search by folder or just search generically. And I can even got an uploader here. So this allows you to quickly update a playlist by editing the playlist itself, browsing for your files, which will upload it into both the media library and put it into the playlist, and then press save and publish, which I'll show you a quick way to do that at the end. So once you've got your media in here, you can rearrange the order. And this just basically says, you know, the content starts at the top, works its way to the bottom, and then rotates through all day, every day. So you can change the way the order that this content plays. You can see the status, the resolution, the file size. If it's a video, you'll see the duration. But if it's an image, a website, or a design, you'll be able to change the duration in here to say, I want this to play for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 15 seconds, however long you want it to appear. You can hover over to get a bit of a preview of that content. And then we have fit, fill, and stretch. So this is only really used if your content doesn't quite fit to the resolution of the screen. If you're creating it all 1920 by 1080 or 16 by 9 aspect ratio, this won't matter, but it does give you that extra option just if the customer hasn't got quite the right content to make sure it fills or fits to the screen. On the far right, we have some actions. First one is delete. This will just remove this file from this playlist. It doesn't delete it from the manage section. You can duplicate if I want this file to play more frequently. So I could say put this menu a couple of times in this playlist. I could show and hide to disable the content, which just temporarily turns it off. I can schedule the content, which means, you know, in a playlist by itself, this content plays all day, every day. But by being able to schedule it, I can turn it on specifically to say, I only want this content to appear on Monday. So by specifying this single day, or maybe Monday and Thursdays, I could specify a start and end time. So if I went from 10 a.m. until, let's go 5 p.m., I could say 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Mondays to Thursdays, I want this content to play, starting on today and ending forever. Or I could say, if this was a promo just for the month of May, I'd like this to start on 1st of May, end of May, Mondays and Thursdays, 10 till 5. Apply and exit. Now that piece of content gets added into the rotation, in addition to all this other content at that time. We can add multiple schedules and do another one for Saturday and really granularly build out exactly when that piece of content will appear in the schedule. So very, very handy just to do some content level scheduling very quickly. You'll notice down the bottom here, I do have a template in here. So this allows me to edit. So if I click on this edit button, it'll open up that design. And now I can say, I don't want this to be $12 anymore. I want this to be $13. And then press save, which will then save it back into the playlist or publish it to the screen. So that's kind of the power of the designer, because if I needed to make a change to this menu, I'd have to obviously go back to my marketing team, make the change, export it, upload it, replace it. It's a very kind of long-winded process, but the editor, very, very quick and very easy to do. In saying that, if you did have to replace this file and you've got content level scheduling, we have this replace feature here. If I click on this, it allows me to replace that with all of the same settings. So while the content level scheduling is in place, tagging system under a pro license as well, this will come into play. So it keeps all those settings in place, but I could upload a new file right here or just select a different file from the media library here. I'll just choose this one and then press replace. It swaps it out in situ and then puts that content, keeps the content level scheduling there. You could also add in a playlist. So instead of just media items individually, I could add in a whole playlist. And a lot of our customers will do this if they've got, say, a standard promotion that they always want to have in all their playlists. So a good way to do that is you put your separate content. If I middle click on that, it opens up here. You can see this is my standard promotion content. It's now embedded in this playlist. So it's a nested playlist that allows us to either organize our content or, force a little bit of compliance from a head office point of view to say, I always want my promo, and then I could have some location specific content down here as well. So you can do all the same things: delete, duplicate, show, hide, and content level schedule with that playlist. So have a play around with that, because our customers have done some pretty funky stuff with that as well. So when you're ready, you can hit preview and you'll see what that content looks like. So cycle through the content. We do have landscape and portrait options at the top. If it looks like this is exactly how that content's going to appear on the screen. So just keep in mind that, 1920 by 1080 on a portrait screen will look like this, which is where the fit fill settings are going to come into it. But you can just cycle through and say, yep, that's how I want my content to look. Before we publish, I'll show you what the overlay looks like. So this button at the top over here allows you to set an overlay. And if I set the green overlay, and then I preview that content, you'll notice that lime green clock now sits in the top right hand corner. And as I cycle through all that content, it stays there. So this is where you can basically make a widget. Could have a QR code, could have a link to something, could have some time and date, weather, whatever you want. It just sits on top of that playlist and displays at all times. When you're ready, you can hit save and publish, and this will either save the playlist straight away, which saves that playlist back into the manage section, or it allows you to assign it to any of the screens on your account. So once the customer has the screen set up, you can come in, press any of these screens and say, these are the content I would like to override. It will tell you over here if it's got a playlist or a schedule already assigned, as well as if it's online. Obviously, the device needs to be online in order for the content to update. Some of the times it could be a scheduled on off, so that way the content will download as soon as the device comes back online in the morning. But if it's been offline for 2 years, you probably need to go do something because the screen's not going to update. So we do have screen groups as well. So this is another feature under our advanced license. It just allows you to put any number of screens into a group and then update all of those screens at the same time. So you could have 100 screens in your promotions one, put them all in there, and then you can update them all at the same time. This has probably been a less used feature than we originally anticipated. We're probably going to be making some changes to it in the future, because I'll show you how some of our customers manage hundreds of screens just using the playlist as well in a second. But either way, we can select screens, screen groups, hit save and publish. It's going to warn me that some of these screens are currently offline. Press save and publish, and within about 40 seconds to a minute, as long as the screens are online, that content will be downloaded, and away we go. So, a quick flow I'll show you for a good way to demonstrate just how simple it is for a customer to update their content. Back on the dashboard over here, you'll see that test playlist exists right here. So if they wanted to make a change to the screens that are affected by that playlist, you could come into the dashboard, click on the test, which will open it up in a new window. In here, you've got your content, so I could maybe disable this or add some media, upload a new file from here, or make some changes to it here. As soon as I hit save and publish, it's already assigned to the screen groups. It's already ready to go. Hit save and publish, and now within, I don't know, a minute or two, that content has been uploaded and assigned to those screens. So very, very quick ways to do it once you set up your screens and set up your playlists. Any questions on that? I don't see any questions coming through, so I'm just going to keep paving away. Back in the manage section, we can now set up a schedule because we've created a playlist. So under here, what we can do is under the manage section, click on add and create a new schedule. So if I create a schedule called test example, this gives us this beautiful calendar view, which now I can start to populate with any of the content based on the time of day that we want it to change. First and foremost, what we'll probably do is set a default playlist. So what this schedule is going to do is it's going to override an existing playlist that exists on the screen, because while a playlist is multiple pieces of content, a schedule is multiple playlists. So in here, what we're going to do is set a default playlist, which is the content that plays when nothing else has been scheduled. So I would set my standard promotion, for example. This is going to gray out the area all around and allow me to say, well, if nothing else is an event, go back to my default playlist. So in here, I can now start to drag over the days and the times and say, okay, what do I want to play? I want to play my morning playlist here on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from this time to this time forever. I can then add that in. This playlist will be triggered at 8:45 until 1 p.m. If I don't want it to be 1 p.m., I could drag this down and go, okay, this is only till 11 or move it around. I've got a fair bit of freedom as long as it doesn't conflict with another playlist. And then as you see, as we cycle through the weeks, that content is always scheduled for my morning playlist. I could then drag over for the midday one and say this is my lunch playlist and do the same thing. And then in the evening, I could create another playlist over here for my evening playlist. So now we've got a simple kind of menu board day parting that says play my morning content, then at lunchtime, play my lunchtime content, and then evening content, so on and so forth. If there's a gap between any of these events, this is where the default playlist comes into play, because the morning playlist will play. As soon as it hits this gap, it goes back and plays my standard promotion, and then it hits lunch, and so on and so forth. So this is the power of the default playlist in these kinds of scenarios. Another example could be we set a Friday afternoon happy hour, for example. So in here on Friday afternoon, between this time, I would like a special promo to play, promos all sites, for example, only on Friday as a one-time event. Put it in there, and now this content will play at that time, and then go back to my general content after that, my specific content, default content after that. So you've got a lot of freedom in here as choosing when the content needs to be played, and it really helps if you want exclusive content to be cycled over at those times. So then we can hit save and publish. The same modal appears where I will choose the screens. It will tell you that it's playing the playlist test, but we're going to override it with the schedule. And then in here, I hit save and publish. And now at those times, it will trigger and play that content in real time. Any questions on the schedule? A new feature that we're going to be working on this year is called a priority schedule as well. Instead of one of the limitations for this schedule is if, let's say you had a different piece of content on every one of your screens and it wasn't the standard promotion. So you had 20 screens and all 20 had a different playlist assigned. We don't have a way over one weekend, for example, to play the same content on all 20 screens and then revert back to what it was playing. But the priority schedule will allow you to do that. So where this default playlist is setting a playlist, it's basically going to say, remember what's playing on the screen, and then at this time, play this content, but then go back to whatever was existing on that screen. So very, very powerful for, say, over Easter, you want to change 100 screens to play your Easter promotion everywhere, but then go back to 100 individual playlists. We can do that with what we're calling a priority schedule. So towards the end of this year, that will hopefully be out, but we are going to be seeking feedback. So if anybody's interested in seeing some mock-ups, please reach out to us, because I'm happy to share that information and get some feedback for how that could affect your customers as well. Perfect. So that's basically the manage section, the design section, playlists and schedules. One little feature that is often missed is in the manage section as well, we have this little gear wheel. This gear wheel allows you to set your defaults when you're adding media into a playlist. So in here, I can set the default setting for the media fit, so fit, fill, or stretch, as well as a default duration. So if I want it to be 15 seconds by default for every image, website, or design I put in, you can set that here and save that. That'll apply to everything on the account. Finally, under the deploy section, we have all of the devices. So this is where you guys at Westan come into it. You may find that if they're doing the setup for you that your screens are already in here, but every one of our screens has its own identity. So when you load up our player app or install our application on the Philips screen, you'll get this 6-digit code. And then when you come in, you can go to the deploy section, add the screen, and then put that code in, give it a screen name, select the license, and put the time zone in. So this is very simple to pair this with the account, and you can make changes to those screen names later by clicking on it, changing the name here, and seeing a whole bunch of information. When you're in, you can assign some content under this content changer to replace the content with a different playlist or schedule, and I can override it here, or you can do that from the playlist or schedule itself. We've got a notification column to email you if the screen goes offline for a specific period of time, say 15 minutes, or you could specify online, offline times in here. So if the screen's supposed to be on Monday to Friday between these times, only send you an email during those times if the screen goes off. So just a way to be more proactive if the device goes offline, so that way you can get it back online. There is a status column here, which will show you whether the device is online, offline, and if so, for how long. Clicking on this gives you a 14-day histogram. Looking at this is very, very powerful because it gives you the ability to identify kind of what's going on the screen. So screen online graph, I think this is it. So obviously what you want to see is a solid green. Obviously this is on Ethernet connection, everything is going really, really well. But otherwise, if it's got scheduled on off, it'll look like this because it's turning on and off repeatedly. Once the screen goes offline, you'll see it's exactly on this date when it's went offline. And if it's on Wi-Fi, you may get this, and this is probably why the internet isn't updated, or the content on the screen isn't updating. So keeping a look on that is a really handy way just to see, went offline on this day, what happened? We had a power outage, okay, something's going on. Otherwise, we have license type, the expiry and the remaining duration, when the content was last updated on the screen, as well as the application version, so we can see, is it running the latest version for troubleshooting points of view. Screen groups over here allow you to group them, as I mentioned, so putting them into your own groups and then putting 100 screens into here. This toggle box allows you to replace all of the content on those screens at the same time. Not as used as we kind of expected, so as I said, we'll be making some changes to that at some point. Under the settings, you have some options here for changing your password, setting up multi-factor authentication, updating account details and user details in here. Companies won't necessarily be visible. Users in here, so you can add as many users as you want, as well as the end user. You can say, add in the email address, select the company first and last name, and then it sends them a welcome email. So there's no limit on the number of users. We have permission groups that allow you to limit what the users can do on that account. So it's access to screens, screen groups, media folders, playlists, so on and so forth. You can refine that down. And then we have a second tier here, which is kind of being overridden by our locations, which I'll show you in a second. But this allows you to give specific access to one or a few screens or a few folders or a few playlists. So we really get down to the nitty gritty on the account and overriding what the customer can see. Player app over here will show you all the installation as well as our support site. So we highly recommend going to our support site if you do have any initial questions, because we do have kind of frequently asked questions in here for how the licenses work. What do I do in this situation? We have all of our tutorials, so a 10-minute tutorial. Highly recommend sending this through to your customers just as an overview, pre-sales or post-sales, on how to use the platform. A quick guide which shows you logging in, updating your playlist and publishing it to the screen, as well as a full featured demo here, which is essentially what I'm going through now. So you can send this through your customers so that they get all the ins and outs of it. So feel free to utilize that, as well as all our written guides in here, so on how to use everything. On this side, we do have our installation guides for all major operating systems and devices. So feel free to have a play around with this, and you should be able to find what you need. So that's the high-level overview of the basics, and I'll show you quickly. I'm conscious we're almost running out of time. Just some of the pro-level features that we have as well, because this could be of interest to some of your customers. So under the pro feed,
are you able to just touch on, before you go on there, Anthony's just got a question with that priority playlist and just the emergency triggers.
Yeah.
Are you able to just touch on that?
Yeah, perfect. So the emergency triggers is going to come as a phase 2 for that. So yes, we definitely have the idea in our minds around evacuation situations, fire management systems being able to trigger. So priority playlist is probably more for content, but triggers sit separate to that. So we're working on triggers with some customers on a one-on-one basis, but we'd definitely be interested to have a conversation with you around what is the system, what is the signal that we can get. But that override system, yeah, essentially that priority schedule could be trigger this, play this, override everything, doesn't matter. But that's one of the big things that we want to do with our triggering ideas in there. So short answer is it's coming. Longer answer is let's have a chat, because I'd love to pick your brain about what they're using and how we need to integrate with that. Okay, cool. So under here, what we can do is add in a location. So locations is part of the pro license, and what it allows you to do is essentially segment your account out and allow specific users access to only specific screens. So as you saw on the permission system, we could go granular and say you've got access to this screen and this playlist. The location takes it one level further. So in here under the locations settings, you can set up your own tiers. So these are fully customizable, and it really just comes down to how you want to organize your structure. Could be by brand, country, region, state, suburb. This one down the bottom is our location. Now, this is the one that matters the most, and you could really have no tiers and just have this one location. When we come over to the location management, you see how the hierarchy gets built out by brand, country, state, so on. But down here under this Springwood site, for example, this is where I assign some screens as well as some users. Now, what this means is when this user logs in, they can only see these two screens and they can only manage anything under that kind of level. If there's a user that maybe has multiple locations, you can put them on multiple locations. So Springwood and Brisbane, for example. Or we could put them up into the Brisbane area and put a user up here with different permissions. So maybe I had a regional manager for the state level. You could put the regional manager in here and say they only have view access. So when they log in, they can only see everything, but then you could put them at this site where they have full access. So they can go in and change all the screen content, but they couldn't do it at Brisbane or the Gold Coast. So the structure here allows it to be quite dynamic in terms of how they build out their entire structure, but really it just comes down to, do you want to give this store their own sub-account while having somebody who can oversee the whole thing? So that's where the location structure comes into it. With adding locations, it also builds that hierarchy out into the manage section. So when they log in, they'll be able to see Springwood site, for example, and they can start putting their own content into here and using this account as if it was their own without seeing anything else in all these different areas. So Very handy for larger organizations if they want that segmented access and being able to separate their accounts. With the location system as well, we can have our approval system. So what this basically allows you to do is if you are in your permission group under here, we have an option here called media approval. And if this is toggled off, if I upload a piece of content, it's going to go into the approval system and wait for somebody with an approver status to come in and check it and make sure it's okay. So really powerful if somebody, maybe can't be trusted, or you don't want all your stores to just upload a heap of random content. It can still be added into a playlist and published, but it won't be actually distributed to the screen until somebody comes in and ticks the box and says, yep, I approve that content for distribution. So just a stopgate to ensure that your content gets sent to the screen that has been actually approved. Tagging is something that we're about to release, and we're looking for people to do some testing with us in the next couple of weeks. So if this is of interest to you or your customers, please reach out, because we're about to go through some pretty hectic testing. But what it allows you to do is put tags on screens. So from here, you'll have a list of all your screens. And in here, I can say, what tags do I want to add to this? I could add in, it's a Queensland screen, for example. I could add in, it's a portrait screen as well. You can fully customize how these tags are added in and whatever that kind of makes sense to you guys or your customers. But now what we can do is start to tell the content which screen they need to be on. So if all these screens came through and I said this one was New South Wales, for example, when I go into my playlist, let's find a playlist, I would add some content in, come through, say some example content. And now we've got this new little tagging view. The tag view now allows me to build a rule and says only display this content if the screen includes Queensland or all of these tags. So it must be Queensland and portrait. So in here under other screens, you'll see my test screen 1's available. I can add this to the current playlist, and now because it matches that rule, it will play on this account, on this piece of content. So next one, I want to say only play if it has New South Wales, for example. See, there's no screens, it's removed that one, but there's this other screen that's on the account, which I'd like to add to this playlist. Put it in here, and now because it has that tag, it's going to match that rule and play. So in here, I've got two pre-prep screens that's saying it's going to play all of this content. If I click on this one, it'll refine down the content on the left to show me the content here or there. So it's showing you exactly what's going to be distributed to each of those screens. But it's a really handy way to create fewer playlists and distribute content dynamically using the tags that exist on those screens. So we're imagining that if you had 100 screens and they all had different content on them, at the moment, you'd have to create 100 separate playlists. Using the tagging system, you create one playlist, build your tag rules, and go from there. We can get quite tricky with it in terms of includes all of, add a second condition, and at least one of. So maybe it has to be portrait, but it could be Queensland or New South Wales. You can do that as well. So as long as it matches Queensland and portrait or New South Wales and portrait, it'll apply to that rule. So really, really powerful for larger customers under that pro license to be able to distribute content to the screens. All right. Any other questions? That's pretty much the high level. If you've got anything specific, I'm conscious that we're slightly over time here, but if anybody has any questions, happy to stick around to discuss them. But yeah, essentially that's Fusion Signage in a nutshell. Always willing to have a chat about any opportunities that are coming up. Happy to do one-on-one demonstrations for customers. Lean on us for any of those requirements, because whatever helps you guys helps us as well. And we always like to hear feedback from customers specifically just around how they're going to be using it. So thank you so much for coming along. Thanks to Westan again for having us along. It was fantastic. Feel free to sign up to another one in the future or just reach out.